Hello. If you're a dad going through divorce, you already know it's stressful, it's frustrating, it's confusing. You may be worried it's going to cost you a boatload of money. You may be worried about how to protect your kids from the harms of divorce. Well, good news, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Fatherhood Forward podcast, which is about being dad after divorce. And I'm your host, John Peters. And in this first episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about me, my backstory, what brings me here to talk to you about this topic today. And I'm also going to share with you my approach to providing you with powerful, reliable tools to help you deal with all the different aspects of the issues of your divorce that you may be concerned about now and ones that may not be on your radar, which may pop up in the future. I'm going to help you be confident to know how to deal with lots of different issues related to divorce and potentially help you save yourself some money by helping you avoid costly litigation, right? So in this podcast episode, I'm going to introduce myself and then tell you a little bit about what's going to come next in future episodes. So I'm John Peters, and over the last 30 years, I've worked with thousands of separated parents as a therapist, a co-parent coach, a mediator. I've also been an expert witness in divorce hearings, and I've written 2 books on the topic, The Co-Parenting Manifesto and The Quick Guide to Divorce Mediation. I've also delivered live Cope with Divorce workshops to around 10,000 parents because I used to teach the state-mandated course in Indiana for many years. And I am a divorced dad myself, so I know a lot about the topic, and I'm going to share with you the nuggets that I have learned over the last 3 decades of working with thousands of cases, many of which were very complicated and frustrating, just like yours. And I'm going to share with you the things that I've learned about how to deal with the issues of divorce. Because if it seems like a complicated situation, you are having accurate perceptions. Divorce is one of the most stressful life events that anybody experiences. They've actually studied that. A study several decades ago looked at different life experiences, and they decided that getting divorced was in the top 3 most stressful life experiences of all. It was right up there with death of a long-term spouse and being convicted of a major felony conviction, right? And I would argue that divorcing with children is even more stressful than divorces without children. So if they had made that differentiation in that study, I bet they would have found that divorcing with children is the most stressful life event ever, right? And in this podcast, I'm going to talk a little bit about why that's stressful and how to deal with all the different aspects of stress, both for you and also for you as a parent, so that you can protect your kids from experiencing the harms of divorce. So a little bit more about my backstory. When I got out of grad school many, many years ago, I was mostly stupid as it related to divorce. I was mostly stupid as a therapist because I was new, right? But my experience of divorce really only came from the fact that my parents were on the edge of divorce for my whole life, basically. They were fighting since before I was born. They separated when I was 16, but got back together. They never finished the legal divorce process. But I grew up in a family that was characterized in part by parents constantly fighting and right on the edge of divorce. That was kind of my only take on divorce at the time, but my parents didn't actually separate. And although I had friends when I was young whose parents were separated, I wasn't paying that much attention. So when I got out of grad school, I wasn't any special expert on how to deal with separating parents. However, what happened was I took this job, and the job was paid for by a grant, 50% of it, half of it. And the grant was to help separated parents not fight. And this agency that I was working for had started this program that basically was going to take referrals from local courts of the worst of their worst cases. So people who were repeatedly going to court and fighting and fighting and fighting, and the judges were getting exasperated with these cases, and they were referring them to us to try to do something to improve the situation, right? So at the time, we called it therapeutic negotiation because we were therapists, And we were using therapy ideas about things that we knew worked for couples, things we knew worked for families. But we knew that we had to do some sort of negotiation of these issues that parents were fighting about. So we were kind of quasi mediators. Now, it eventually did lead me to go get formal education to become a formal mediator. But we were just flying by the seat of our pants, right? And we were trying to figure out how to help parents stay out of court. Because here are two big concerns for divorce, right? Divorces are not all bad. Lots of people get divorced and it doesn't go badly for the parents, and it does actually go badly for the kids. There are lots of kids whose parents divorce and the kids look just fine no matter how you look at them. But the two big ways that divorces can go bad is one, that people can repeatedly go to the courts and fight in the courts for stuff that the courts can't fix. And it costs the parents a boatload of money, and it also frustrates and sometimes makes the situation worse in terms of the hostility and the inability of the parents to co-parent effectively. But, the average divorce, for example, in the United States costs about $30,000 combined. But these hostile divorces often top $100,000. So the hostile divorces are wasting tens of thousands of dollars pursuing something at a place that's not going to fix it. The judge can't go home with you and make your ex be nice, right? And so that's one way that divorces go bad. The other thing is that while lots of kids have parents who separate and they do just fine, there are lots of kids who don't. And there's been research on this, and they look at things like how kids do in school, their social development, criminality, drug use, mental health issues, whether kids run away, just all the different things that you can look at in terms of whether kids are doing well or not well in the early parts of their development. And it turns out the biggest predictor of kids not doing well, okay, listen closely because this will be on the quiz later. Just kidding. The biggest predictor is sustained hostility between the parents, okay? Lots of parents get divorced and aren't hostile or prevent their kids from being put in the middle and witnessing the hostility, and those kids tend to do just fine. But the kids who are constantly exposed to the hostility between the parents and who get caught in the middle of the parental conflict, those are the kids who don't do well, right? So part of my goal is to help you be in that better group that learns the tools to powerfully protect your kids from the hostility of your divorce. There's going to be hostility, there's going to be anger, but we don't want your kids to be affected by that negatively, and that's part of my goal in this podcast series. Okay, so a little more about what we learned when we tried to work with these parents. The stuff that we thought we knew how to do was not super effective, and so part of the challenge of working with separated parents was trying to figure out why our traditional techniques of like couples therapy and family therapy would so consistently fail with these parents. Because divorce is its own animal in terms of the set of challenges that it causes the family to have to deal with, and each individual within the family, each parent, each child. And the short answer is it's overwhelming because it's too much, right? Which leads to the answer to what do we do about it, right? So I'm going to unpack my program of what I have applied in working successfully with many, many separated parents to help them cope better, to co-parent better, to parent better, to get along better. But the short version of it is basically your behaviors lead to consequences. What you do leads to outcomes, okay? Your state that you're in affects your behaviors, right? Just like, for example, you get a night of really bad sleep, the next day you're in an awful state. You're irritable, you can't concentrate, you can't perform well at complex tasks at work or whatever. And so your state affects your behaviors, right? And then the consequences flow from your behaviors. So one of the things that I figured out in working with separated parents to try to help them cope better and to co-parent more effectively was to help parents understand how to take care of themselves so that their own state is more optimal and less compromised. Because if you are in a better state yourself, then you are going to perform better when you have to deal with challenging situations, including interacting with your ex about co-parenting issues or interacting with your kid, right, as a parent. So I'm going to teach you how to understand working effectively with your own state so that you can put yourself in the best position to not undermine yourself in the very challenging and complex ways that you have to perform as a parent and a co-parent now that you have separated, okay? Beyond that, there are lots of what we call normative issues, these typical issues that exist for parents in the situation of trying to co-parent after separation. And in the last 30 years, I have learned a lot about those particular issues. So, for example, there are better ways for parents to try to structure how they communicate after separation that's based on a variety of factors. And this is why traditional couples therapy doesn't work for separated parents, right? Because a couple who's together and relatively positive toward each other and civil is going to be playing with one set of rules, but parents that have a lot of lack of trust and anger and hostility and hurt and complications and complicated situations, it's a completely different animal, right? So I know how to teach you how to navigate that particular territory. And I'm going to teach you some brain tricks, basically, to get you in the best state. And I'm also going to teach you some hacks so that you and your ex, and this is going to work even if you're dealing with a frustrating ex, okay? Because trust me, I didn't just work in all of the rosy cases on the planet. I've worked with thousands of cases of divorce. Most of them are dads dealing with difficult exes, right? So I'm going to teach you what I've learned about how to set you up for success, even if you're dealing with a frustrating ex, so that you can communicate effectively and make it more likely that you and your ex will be civil and collaborative, less hostile, and be less likely to expose your kid to that hostility. So I'm going to help you cope. I'm going to help you co-parent better and parent better, right? And I'm also going to teach you some things about how to use things other than the legal system to deal with issues. Right now, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not here to give you legal advice. And, mileage may vary. Different cases have different types of outcomes. And so I can't promise you, follow tip A, B, and C, and it'll save you exactly $20,000 in litigation fees. But I can tell you that there are lots of things that you and your ex can do that are more functional and less expensive than running in and out of court trying to get the judge to solve all of your disputes. That's just a fact. And I'll share with you all the things I've learned over the last 3 decades in working with thousands of cases where I've seen that type of result so that you can be set up for success here. So thank you for joining me in this podcast, episode 1 of the Fatherhood Forward podcast. And I'm going to be publishing regular podcast episodes on this channel. So please subscribe, bookmark the channel, check back, like this video if you found it helpful. And if you find any of these episodes helpful, feel free to share them on your social media, because I'd like to get the word out so that I can help lots of folks get some good support in this podcast. And just so you know, if you'd like to work with me, I have a live group coaching group that I run online, and you're welcome to join me there. I have multiple weekly group coaching calls, and if you're a dad going through divorce and you'd like to join that support group and get some coaching support from me, I'll put a link down in the description below. Feel free to jump over there and join me in the Fatherhood Forward coaching group. All right. So I will see you in the next episode.